6,000 pages about Diana's death sit in a Paris vault, armed guards sealed until 2082. A source who reviewed the files told RadarOnline it stinks of a cover-up at the highest level. Blood samples showing impossible results, 14 cameras that captured nothing, Diana's letters predicting her death, hidden for 6 years. Today I'm revealing 15 questions nobody has answered, from the warnings Diana wrote, to the evidence that disappeared, to the sealed vault William can demand opened when he becomes king. Question 7 is the warning her solicitor locked in a safe. Question 15, what William will find when he opens that vault. Let's start with what Harry admitted. Number 1, why were William and Harry persuaded not to reopen the investigation? In his memoir, Spare, Prince Harry described driving through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel at the same speed his mother's car was traveling when it crashed. He was 23 years old. He needed to understand how she died. He told Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes that he still does not have the answers he needs. Truth be known, no. I don't think I do, Harry said. And I don't think my brother does either. I don't think the world does. When Cooper asked if Harry would favor reopening the inquest, the prince hesitated. I don't even know if it's an option now, he said. But no, I think, would I like to do that now? It's a hell of a question, Anderson. Harry revealed that he and William had considered demanding the investigation be reopened. They saw gaps and holes, conclusions that made no sense to two sons who lost their mother. Then palace officials talked them out of it. Harry never named who convinced them to drop it. He only wrote that they were persuaded not to. Two princes who lost their mother in a crash that shocked the world were told not to ask questions. They listened because they had no choice. William is not a prince anymore. He is the Prince of Wales and heir to the throne. When he becomes king, nobody tells him what questions he can ask. Nobody persuades him to stay quiet. Number 2. Why were Henri Paul's blood samples showing impossible results never retested? The official investigation concluded that driver Henri Paul was intoxicated with blood alcohol levels 3 times the legal limit. This single finding became the foundation of the entire official narrative. Drunk driver, tragic accident, case closed. But the blood samples raised serious questions that nobody resolved. Professor Athol Johnston, a clinical pharmacologist at Bart's Hospital, testified at the London inquiry that one of the blood samples was probably not Henri Paul's. Results from samples taken from different parts of Paul's body were nearly identical. Johnston and other expert witnesses flagged this as highly unusual. One test showed Paul's carbon monoxide saturation at 20.7%. Dr. Alan Hay, a carbon monoxide expert, told ITV that carbon monoxide disperses at a rate of about half every 4 to 5 hours. This meant Paul could have had 40% carbon monoxide in his system at the time of the crash. At that level, a person cannot function at all, let alone navigate a car through Paris traffic at night. Colleagues who saw Paul that evening stated he appeared completely sober. Ritz Hotel CCTV footage showed him walking normally and tying his shoelaces without difficulty just minutes before the crash. Claude Garrick, a close friend of Paul's, told investigators that Paul was a responsible person who would never have put lives at risk by driving drunk. No one ever retested the blood samples. The chain of custody went unverified. The foundation of the official story rests on evidence that was never properly examined. Number 3. Who was driving the white Fiat Uno? French investigators found physical evidence that Diana's Mercedes made contact with another vehicle shortly before the crash. Broken red glass from a taillight. Traces of white paint scraped onto the Mercedes. Skid marks indicating hard braking. The French Brigade Criminel Chief Martine Montet confirmed to Channel 4 that her team found these fragments at the crash scene. Witnesses reported seeing a white Fiat Uno speeding away from the tunnel after the crash. One witness, named Sabine Dauzon, described a tan driver with a muzzled dog in the back seat. The car's taillight was shattered. Police searched for the owner from a list of more than 5,000 white Fiat Unos registered in and around Paris. They questioned a suspect named Levan Tan, who claimed he was working as a security guard that night. Investigators could not verify his alibi. The colleague he claimed was working with him could not be found. Tan said he couldn't recall the man's name. In 2006, Tan's father told investigators that his son had resprayed his white Fiat Uno red within hours of the crash. He allegedly woke up his mechanic brother in the middle of the night to help him do it. When asked why, Tan claimed the repainting happened before the crash, not after. The vehicle was never identified. The driver was never found. 28 years later, this is still the largest piece of physical evidence that no one can explain. The lead French investigator later called this a lasting frustration that haunted the entire investigation. Number 4. Why did none of the cameras along Diana's route capture the Mercedes? According to The Independent, there were more than 14 CCTV cameras in the area around the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. None of them recorded footage of Diana's car. The Paris Urban Traffic Unit controlled a traffic monitoring camera directly above the underpass. That department closed down at approximately 11 p.m. that night. No recordings were made after closing time. Lieutenant Eric Gigou of the Brigade Criminelle led the team that investigated all possible camera locations along Diana's route. His team identified 10 CCTV cameras. None had any relevant images. Most were privately owned security cameras pointed at building entrances rather than the road. Paris has cameras everywhere. Yet there is no visual record of what happened inside that tunnel. No footage of the Mercedes entering, the white Fiat Uno, or the crash itself. Number 5. Why was Henry Paul carrying large amounts of cash and meeting intelligence officers? When Henry Paul's body was searched after the crash, investigators found approximately $1,500 in cash. His movements in the 3 hours before returning to the Ritz have never been established. Former MI6 officer Richard Tomlinson initially told Mohammed Al-Fayed that Paul was a paid MI6 informant. Tomlinson later testified that he could not be certain and may have confused details. Writer Gerald Posner reported that an NSA source told him Paul met with a member of French intelligence on the evening he died. Documents in the French judicial dossier showed a link between Paul and the Direction de la Surveillance du Territoire, the domestic French intelligence agency that handles counterespionage. Where the cash came from remains unknown. The intelligence connections were never fully investigated, and no one knows where Paul spent those 3 hours before he got behind the wheel of the car that would carry Diana to her death. Number 6. Why was Diana's letter predicting her death dismissed as paranoia? In October 1996, Diana wrote a letter to her butler Paul Burrell and asked him to keep it just in case. "This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous," she wrote. "My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure and serious head injury in order to make the path clear for him to marry." Less than 10 months later, Diana died in a car crash with severe head and chest injuries. When the letter was published in Burrell's 2003 book, A Royal Duty, the establishment dismissed it as evidence of Diana's paranoia. But Diana had also given a nearly identical warning to her solicitor a year earlier. That warning was not dismissed. It was hidden. Number 7. Why was the Mishcon note kept in a safe for 6 years instead of given to investigators? In October 1995, Diana met with her solicitor, Victor Mishcon. During that meeting, Diana told Mishcon that reliable sources had warned her that efforts would be made to get rid of her through a staged car accident. The accident would involve either killing her outright or injuring her badly enough to make her appear unbalanced. Mishcon wrote down her exact words and created what became known as the Mishcon Note. When Diana died less than 2 years later in almost exactly the circumstances she had described, Mishcon handed the note to Sir Paul Condon, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner. Condon put it in his safe. It stayed there for 6 years. Lord Stevens, who later headed the inquiry into Diana's death, said he was only made aware of the note when he became commissioner himself. The French investigation had already concluded by then. The narrative of a drunk driver had already been established as official fact. Stevens personally interviewed Lord Mishcon 3 times about the note. Mishcon died in early 2006. Shortly before his death, he told Stevens that at the time he had thought Diana was paranoid and hadn't held much credence to it, but the note still existed, the warning still matched what happened. And British authorities kept it locked away instead of giving it to French investigators who were determining how Diana died. Number 8. Why was Diana's body embalmed before a full autopsy could be performed? Diana's body was embalmed unusually quickly after the crash. The procedure was carried out before the required French paperwork had been completed. Under French law, documentation must be finished before embalming any corpse likely to be subject to a post-mortem examination. The paperwork for Diana was completed only after the embalming had already been performed. French officials claimed the embalming was necessary because Diana's body was being viewed by her sisters, Prince Charles, and President Jacques Chirac that afternoon. They said there was simply no time to complete paperwork first. But no proper pregnancy test was ever conducted on Diana's blood before embalming occurred. Nobody has explained that decision. Number 9. Why did the ambulance take nearly 2 hours to travel 4 miles? Diana was conscious after the crash, but bleeding internally from a tear in her pulmonary vein near her heart. In the American scoop-and-run system, she would have been rushed to the nearest hospital within minutes. The French system was different. Emergency crews were trained to stabilize patients at the scene before transport. They called it stay and play. Diana spent nearly an hour being treated inside the tunnel. Emergency workers removed Doty's body from the car first, even though he was already dead. When they finally asked to take Diana to a hospital just 4 miles away, it took another 10 minutes for the hospital to agree to receive her. The ambulance finally departed at 1:41 a.m. The doctor ordered the driver to travel extremely slowly to avoid bumps and shocks. The ambulance stopped again near the Gare d'Austerlitz to treat a sudden drop in blood pressure. Diana arrived at Petit-Salpêtrière Hospital at 2:06 a.m. The crash had occurred at approximately 12:23 a.m. Nearly 2 hours had passed. When surgeons finally opened her chest, they found a single tear in her pulmonary vein. They sutured it and stopped the bleeding, but her heart never recovered. She was pronounced dead at 4 a.m. Number 10. Why was Diana given sedatives known to cause heart problems? At 12:45 a.m., a French emergency doctor arrived at the crash scene. He did not initially recognize the extent of Diana's injuries. He gave her Hypnoval and fentanyl to calm her down. Dr. John Zidlow, an emergency medicine expert who reviewed the case for CBS News, was asked whether these sedatives could have aggravated Diana's condition. The word is could have, he said. Yes, they could have. Hypnoval and fentanyl are known to sometimes cause heart and respiratory problems. Diana's first cardiac arrest occurred while she was being extracted from the car. Number 11. Why were crash scene photographs allowed to disappear? In 2006, French authorities revealed that photographs showing Diana and Doty at the crash scene had disappeared from the investigative files. A British lawyer responded that it is scarcely believable that such crucial evidence could be lost just weeks before the inquest. The photographs were part of the official investigative record. They documented the positions of the bodies, the damage to the vehicle, and forensic details that could never be recreated. Nobody has explained how photographs in an investigation this important could simply go missing from a secure archive. Evidence documenting Diana's final moments, gone, without a trace. Number 12. Why did French investigators claim the entire dossier was lost just before the British inquest? In 2007, weeks before the £17 million British inquest into Diana's death was scheduled to begin, French authorities announced that the entire investigative dossier had been lost. Lawyer Jean-Louis Pelletier went to the Paris courthouse to review the files. He was told they were not there. "I know files go missing from time to time," he said, "but bearing in mind the size and importance of this particular one, it is exceptional." The dossier contained 6,000 pages compiled by 30 police officers over 18 months. Partial photocopies were eventually provided to Lord Stevens, but the original French documents are the only version admissible in any future court proceedings. Nobody has fully accounted for those originals. Number 13. Why did the paparazzi face no criminal charges in Britain? 9 photographers who had been following Diana and Dodi were charged with manslaughter in France. France's highest court dropped all charges in 2002. The 2008 British inquest returned a verdict of unlawful killing, citing the grossly negligent driving of both Henri Paul and the pursuing paparazzi. The jury specifically named the paparazzi as contributing to Diana's death. No paparazzi photographer ever faced criminal charges in Britain. The photographers who took pictures of Diana dying in the back seat of the wrecked Mercedes were tried only for invasion of privacy. 3 were fined approximately €1 each. Harry wrote that the last thing his mother saw on Earth was a camera flash. The photographers who were flashing those cameras were never charged. Number 14. Why was Trevor Rees-Jones's memory never recovered? Trevor Rees-Jones was Diana's bodyguard that night. He was the sole survivor of the crash. He suffered devastating injuries, including severe facial trauma that required extensive reconstructive surgery. Rees-Jones has said he remembers almost nothing from the moment the car entered the tunnel until he woke up in the hospital. He is the only living witness to what happened inside that car in the final seconds before impact. His testimony could have answered questions about whether the car was forced off the road, whether there was contact with another vehicle, or whether a flash of light blinded the driver. His memory never came back. Rees-Jones wrote a book in 2000 about the night Diana died. He said he still could not remember the crash. More than 28 years later, those memories have not returned. The only surviving witness cannot tell anyone what he saw. The one person who could answer every question has no memory of the answers. Number 15. Why is the French dossier sealed until 2082? The 6,000-page French investigative file is stored in the basement archives of the Palais de Justice in Paris. Armed officers guard it at all times. Under Article L. 213, 2 of France's Heritage Code, public access is blocked for 75 years. Because the dossier was completed in 2007, it cannot legally be opened until 2082 at the earliest. French authorities have the power to extend that restriction indefinitely. A source who reviewed part of the sealed files told RadarOnline that this secrecy stinks of a cover-up and conspiracy at the highest level. The file contains thousands of pages that have never been released publicly. Witness statements, toxicology analyses, photographs from the crash scene that disappeared from other records but may still exist in the original dossier. The 30th anniversary of Diana's death arrives on August 31st, 2027. The French government has given no indication it will unseal the files early, but William does not need French cooperation to start asking questions. As king, William can raise the matter directly with the French government through diplomatic channels. He can formally request that Britain ask France to release the documents. He can demand answers that his mother never lived to receive. Diana wrote letters predicting her own death. She told her solicitor someone was planning to kill her in a car crash. Her warnings were locked in safes instead of being investigated. Blood samples showed impossible results, and evidence disappeared. The only surviving witness cannot remember what happened, and 6,000 pages of investigative files are sealed until long after everyone involved is dead. William was told to stop asking questions when he was powerless. He is not powerless anymore. For more on what William is planning for Camilla, click right here for 20 powers Charles handed William that erase Camilla's entire future.